Abigail Reynolds stood at her kitchen window, watching the December snow drift slowly onto her carefully tended garden. At 66, she still maintained the property with the same precision she had applied throughout her 30-year career as a high school principal. The 3-bedroom colonial in Oakwood Heights had been her sanctuary since her late husband Thomas had purchased it 4 decades ago. Now, it had become her prison. The familiar sound of expensive heels clicking against the walkway made Abigail's shoulders tense. She didn't need to look at her watch to know it was exactly 10 a.m., the time her daughter-in-law Vanessa typically arrived, unannounced, to issue her daily demands. "Just breathe," Abigail whispered to herself, smoothing down her cardigan and straightening her back. 5 years of practice had taught her that resistance only made things worse. The front door opened without a knock. Vanessa never knocked. Why would she? In her mind, this house was already hers. "Abigail?" the voice called out, dripping with that false sweetness that made Abigail's teeth clench. "Are you in the kitchen? I need coffee." Abigail had already prepared a fresh pot, knowing from experience that Vanessa would demand it. She poured a cup into Vanessa's preferred mug, the handcrafted ceramic one Thomas had given Abigail for their 30th anniversary. Vanessa had claimed it the first month after Jason's wedding. "Good morning, Vanessa," Abigail said evenly as her daughter-in-law swept into the kitchen. Vanessa Parker Reynolds, formerly just Vanessa Parker before she married Abigail's only son Jason 5 years ago, was undeniably beautiful. At 34, she had the confident stride of a woman who had always gotten what she wanted. Today, she wore a crimson designer dress that probably cost more than Abigail's monthly pension, her honey blonde hair styled in elegant waves, diamond studs glittering in her ears. "Did you see the Instagram post about Olivia's new beach house?" Vanessa asked, not bothering with a greeting as she took the coffee from Abigail's hand without a thank you. "It's ridiculous how she always needs to one-up me, as if marrying Marcus makes her royalty." Abigail nodded politely, having learned long ago that Vanessa's relationship with her older sister Olivia was a minefield best navigated with minimal input. "I'm sure it's lovely," she offered neutrally. "It's tacky," Vanessa declared, settling herself at the kitchen island as if taking a throne. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through it with manicured nails, then set it down with a dramatic sigh. "Abigail, I need you to make those little quiches for my book club tomorrow, the ones with the goat cheese. Not a request, a command." "I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow morning," Abigail said quietly. Vanessa waved her hand dismissively. "Just make them tonight and leave them in the refrigerator. I'll heat them up." 5 years ago, when Jason had first brought Vanessa home, Abigail had been charmed by her vivacity and apparent affection for Jason. Thomas had just passed away 6 months earlier, and seeing her son so happy had been a balm for her grief. Vanessa had been all smiles and compliments then. "Your home is so beautiful, Mrs. Reynolds. Jason tells me you're an amazing cook. You'll have to teach me your recipes someday." That someday never came. Instead, 3 months after the wedding, Vanessa had shown her true colors. "Jason and I are having friends over tonight," she'd announced one Friday morning. "We need you to prepare dinner for 8 people, something impressive." Abigail, still eager to please her new daughter-in-law, had spent the entire day cooking an elaborate meal. She'd set the table with her best china and prepared to join them for dinner. "Oh, Abigail," Vanessa had said with a tight smile as guests began arriving. "We won't need you at the table. Just bring out the courses when I text you, okay? And clean up afterward." That night, from the guest bedroom where she'd retreated, Abigail had heard Vanessa accepting compliments for the meal. "Thank you. It's my grandmother's recipe. I'm so glad you enjoyed it." The pattern had continued and worsened. What began as occasional requests became regular demands. What started as polite suggestions became imperious commands. Vanessa had transformed from a charming bride to a relentless dictator, and somehow Abigail had become the servant. And Jason, her smart, kind-hearted son, had changed too. The boy who had once noticed everything, who had been her rock after Thomas died, now seemed blind to his mother's situation. At first, Abigail had tried to speak to him about it. "Jason, I feel uncomfortable with how Vanessa speaks to me sometimes." Her son had frowned, a flash of the old Jason momentarily visible. "What do you mean? Has she been disrespectful?" But before Abigail could explain, Vanessa had appeared, slipping her arm through Jason's. "Your mother is just adjusting to having young people around again," she'd said with a laugh. "Isn't that right, Abigail? We're just so grateful you're here to help us while we're building Jason's business." And Jason had nodded, the moment of concern erased by Vanessa's careful framing. "Mom, I know it's an adjustment, but we really do appreciate everything you do." Over time, Jason's defenses of his mother grew weaker, his blindness to Vanessa's behavior more profound. Abigail watched as her once attentive son became absorbed in his fledgling financial consulting business and increasingly under Vanessa's influence. The woman had a talent for isolation. She'd gradually convinced Jason that his old friends were holding him back, that his mother was becoming forgetful or oversensitive, that his time was better spent networking with Vanessa's wealthy connections than maintaining his former relationships. Now, watching Vanessa scroll through her phone while drinking from Thomas's mug, Abigail felt the familiar ache of loss, not just for Thomas, but for the son who seemed increasingly distant, despite living just 20 minutes away. "The cleaners need to come before Christmas," Vanessa continued, not looking up from her screen. "The upstairs guest rooms are dusty, and the downstairs bathroom needs a deep clean." "I cleaned the guest rooms last week," Abigail Sassy said. "Well, they need it again," Vanessa replied. "And make sure they use the unscented products this time. The lavender gives me a headache." Abigail added it to her mental list, wondering when exactly she had gone from mother-in-law to unpaid housekeeper. She had been a respected educator, had led a staff of 70 teachers, had shaped the futures of thousands of students. Now she was taking orders about cleaning products. "Abigail, are you listening to me?" Vanessa snapped. "Yes, unscented products," Abigail repeated. "I'll call them today." "Good." Vanessa finished her coffee and set the mug down for Abigail to wash. "I need to run. I have a lunch meeting with a potential client." Vanessa's job at a boutique art gallery was largely ceremonial, a position secured through Jason's connections that required minimal hours and provided maximum social status. Yet she spoke about it as if she were running a Fortune 500 company. "Will you and Jason be coming for dinner this weekend?" Abigail asked, trying to maintain some semblance of a normal family relationship. Vanessa paused at the doorway, her expression calculating. "Actually, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. We'll discuss it tomorrow." Something in her tone made Abigail uneasy, but before she could inquire further, Vanessa was gone, the front door closing with a decisive click. Alone again, Abigail washed the coffee mug carefully, replacing it in the cabinet where it had stood for years before Vanessa had claimed it. Small acts of reclamation were all she had these days. The phone rang, startling her from her thoughts. It was Jason. "Hey, Mom," he said, his voice tired. At 36, her son was working himself to exhaustion trying to build his business while maintaining Vanessa's expensive lifestyle. "Did Vanessa stop by?" "Yes, just left," Abigail replied, keeping her tone neutral. "Great. Did she mention anything about Christmas plans?" "No, just that we'd talk tomorrow." Jason sighed. "Okay, I'll let her tell you then. I'm swamped with work. Love you, Mom." "Love you too," Abigail said, but he had already hung up. 5 years ago, their conversations had been meaningful, filled with shared jokes and mutual support. Now they were brief, functional exchanges that left Abigail feeling hollow. She walked to the living room where family photos lined the mantel. Thomas smiling beside her at Jason's college graduation. Jason grinning with his arm around her at his business launch. The wedding photo where Vanessa stood between mother and son, her smile triumphant even then. "I miss you, Thomas," Abigail whispered to the empty room. You would have seen through her from the start. The next morning, Abigail was in the garden, clearing dead leaves despite the December chill, when she heard the now familiar sound of Vanessa's Mercedes pulling into the driveway. It was earlier than usual, barely 9 a.m., and Abigail felt a prickle of apprehension. Unscheduled early visits from Vanessa typically meant additional demands. She removed her gardening gloves and brushed the soil from her pants, mentally preparing herself. Today, she would try again to establish some boundaries. Small ones. Reasonable ones. Perhaps suggest that Vanessa call before coming over. The clicking of heels approached, faster and more determined than usual. Vanessa appeared around the corner of the house, her face flushed with excitement. Today she wore a deep red cashmere sweater with designer jeans and carrying a leather planner embossed with her initials. "There you are," she exclaimed. "I've been looking all over. Why are you gardening in December?" Before Abigail could answer, Vanessa continued. "Never mind that. I have wonderful news, Abigail. Simply wonderful." Something about Vanessa's heightened enthusiasm sent warning signals through Abigail's mind. "Good morning to you too, Vanessa," she said pointedly. "What news?" "Let's go inside. It's freezing out here, and I need to show you my plans," Vanessa said, already turning toward the house, clearly expecting Abigail to follow. In the kitchen, Vanessa spread her planner across the island counter, flipping to a section marked with gold tabs. "I've been organizing the most amazing Christmas gathering," she announced. "It's going to be perfect." "That sounds lovely," Abigail said cautiously. "Will you be hosting at your condo?" Vanessa laughed as if Abigail had told a hilarious joke. "Our condo? Don't be silly. It's barely 800 square feet. No, we'll be having it here, of course." Of course. Without asking. Again. "I see," Abigail said, her voice cooling. "And when were you planning to discuss this with me?" "I'm discussing it with you now," Vanessa replied dismissively. "It's Christmas, Abigail. Family time. Obviously, we'd celebrate in the family home." "My home," Abigail corrected gently. Something flashed in Vanessa's eyes, irritation, perhaps even anger, before her practiced smile returned. "Our family home," she amended. "Anyway, it's going to be spectacular. I've already spoken with everyone." "Everyone?" Abigail asked. "My entire family," Vanessa said, her voice rising with excitement. "Uncle Ricardo is flying in from Miami. He's so successful, owns half the real estate in South Beach. Olivia and Marcus are coming with their kids. My cousin Diane and her husband. Aunt Elaine and Uncle Peter. My second cousins from Chicago." She flipped a page in her planner. "My brother-in-law Derek and his new wife. My college roommate Charlotte and her husband. They're practically family. My nieces and nephews. It'll be perfect for the kids to experience a true family Christmas." Abigail felt a cold weight settling in her stomach. "Vanessa, exactly how many people are you planning to invite to my home?" Vanessa glanced down at her list. 25. Maybe 27 if Charlotte's parents can make it. She looked up with a bright smile. Isn't it exciting? 25 people for Christmas in her home without asking. "And when were you planning to hold this gathering?" Abigail asked, her voice steady despite the anger building inside her. "December 23rd through 26th, of course. Everyone's staying here. I've already assigned the bedrooms." She flipped to another tabbed section. "Olivia and Marcus in the blue guest room. Ricardo in the master guest suite. He's used to the best, you know. The younger couples can take the basement. You won't mind sleeping in the study for a few nights, will you, Abigail? We need your room for Auntie Lane. She has back problems." Abigail stared at her daughter-in-law, momentarily speechless. 5 years of accumulated resentment bubbled dangerously close to the surface. "I've planned everything," Vanessa continued, oblivious to the storm gathering in Abigail's eyes. "3 turkeys at least. That chocolate silk pie you make. Everyone will love it. You'll need to decorate the entire house, of course. I want it to look perfect for the Instagram photos. Oh, and we should get the good china out. The silver, too." She paused, finally looking up at Abigail's silence. "Well, isn't this going to be wonderful?" Abigail took a deep breath. "Vanessa, you've invited 25 people to my home for Christmas without consulting me." "Well, you would have said yes anyway," Vanessa replied with a shrug. "Would I?" "Of course. You love cooking for the family. You're always saying you wish the house was fuller." "I said I missed having family gatherings. I didn't say I wanted to be displaced from my bedroom and cook for 25 strangers at Christmas." Vanessa's expression hardened. "They're not strangers, Abigail. They're my family. Soon to be your family, too." She leaned forward. "Besides, what else would you be doing? Sitting here alone watching old movies? This way you'll feel useful." Useful. The word struck Abigail like a physical blow. Was that all she was to them now? A useful servant in what had once been her own home? Vanessa mistook her silence for acquiescence and smiled triumphantly. "Perfect. I'll email you the full guest list and dietary restrictions. Uncle Ricardo's gluten-free, and Olivia's kids are allergic to nuts. Oh, and we'll need to rearrange the living room furniture to fit everyone." She checked her watch. "I have to run. Hair appointment. But I'll check in tomorrow to see how the preparations are coming along." She gathered her planner and stood. "This is going to be the best Christmas ever, Abigail. You'll see." As Vanessa headed toward the door, something inside Abigail shifted. A lifetime of accommodation and compromise suddenly gave way to clarity. She thought of Thomas, of the respect he had always shown her, of the partnership they had built. She thought of her career, of the students who had looked up to her, of the teachers who had valued her leadership. And she thought of the past 5 years, of increasingly demanding commands, of disappearing boundaries, of her gradual erasure from her own life. "Perfect," Abigail said, her voice calm and clear. Vanessa turned, surprised by the firmness in her tone. "Perfect," Abigail repeated. "It will be a perfect Christmas for you all because I won't be here." Vanessa blinked, her perfectly sculpted eyebrows drawing together in confusion. "What do you mean you won't be here?" "I'm going on vacation. You all can do the cooking and cleaning. I am not the maid." The color drained from Vanessa's face. "Vacation? What vacation? You can't go on vacation. Christmas is in 2 weeks." "Precisely. Plenty of time for you to learn how to cook 3 turkeys." "This is ridiculous," Vanessa spluttered. "You can't just what? Decide how to spend my own holidays? Choose what happens in my own home? But I've already told everyone to come." "That was your decision, made without consulting me. Now I'm making mine." Vanessa's shock was rapidly transforming into anger. "Jason will never allow this." The statement hung in the air between them, revealing more about their family dynamic than Vanessa perhaps intended. Allow. As if Abigail needed her son's permission to leave her own home. "Jason doesn't control my movements," Abigail said, her voice still unnervingly calm. "Neither do you." But what am I supposed to tell everyone?" Vanessa demanded, her composure cracking. "My entire family is expecting a perfect Christmas." "Tell them the truth," Abigail suggested. "That you assumed I would be your employee without consulting me, and you were mistaken." Vanessa's cheeks flushed with anger. "I always knew you were selfish," she hissed. "But this This is the absolute limit. My family is coming from far away, some from out of the country, and you're going to ruin their Christmas over a whim? A whim. 5 years of mistreatment, humiliation, and emotional abuse, and she called it a whim. That's not my problem, Abigail replied. You should have consulted me before inviting 25 people to my house. Our house, Vanessa shrieked, losing her composure completely. Jason is your son. This house will be ours one day. There it was. The truth that had always hovered in the air but had never been spoken aloud. Vanessa didn't see Abigail as family. She saw her as a temporary obstacle before she inherited everything Abigail had built with years of hard work and sacrifice. Interesting perspective, Abigail murmured, watching Vanessa's pupils dilate with panic as she realized what she had revealed. At that moment, they heard keys in the front door. Jason was home from work early. Vanessa ran to him like a child tattling to her father, her heels clattering with desperate urgency. Jason, your mother has gone insane, Vanessa's voice carried from the hallway. She says she won't help with Christmas. She says she's going on vacation and leaving us alone with my entire family. Abigail remained in the kitchen, listening to their muffled conversation. Vanessa spoke in a rush, her tone sharp and dramatic. Jason murmured responses Abigail couldn't make out. After a few minutes, their footsteps approached the kitchen. Jason appeared in the doorway, his suit wrinkled after a day at the office, his face tired but annoyed. Behind him, Vanessa followed like a shadow, arms crossed and a triumphant expression on her face. She clearly expected him to put Abigail in her place. Mom, Jason began in that patronizing tone he had adopted since his marriage. Vanessa told me about your decision. Don't you think you're being a little dramatic? Dramatic. Her own son was calling her dramatic for refusing to be Vanessa's servant. No, Jason, I'm not being dramatic, Abigail replied evenly. I'm being clear. But Mom, it's Christmas. It's a time for family. Vanessa already invited everyone. We can't cancel now. I didn't say to cancel, I said I won't be here. Vanessa stepped forward, placing herself between Jason and Abigail like a human barrier. See what I mean? She said to Jason. She's become completely irrational. What will my family think? What am I going to tell them? Tell them the truth, Abigail answered calmly. That you assumed I would be your employee without consulting me, and that you were mistaken. Jason sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair as he did when he was frustrated. Mom, be reasonable. You know Vanessa can't cook for 25 people by herself. And why not? Abigail challenged. I've cooked for her parties for years. It's time she learned. But I work, Vanessa protested, her voice rising in pitch. I can't take days off to cook. My career is important. Her career. A part-time position at a boutique gallery that she'd probably gotten through Jason's connections. But of course, her career was more important than Abigail's time, energy, and dignity. Then hire a caterer, Abigail suggested with a sweet smile. There are many excellent options in the city. Catering costs a fortune, Jason exclaimed. Why spend thousands of dollars when you can... He stopped abruptly, realizing what he was about to say. When I can do it for free, Abigail finished for him. Like always, like the employee you think I am. The silence stretched between them like a widening crack. Vanessa and Jason exchanged nervous glances, clearly trying to find a way to manipulate her into giving in. Look, Mom, Jason said finally, adopting a softer tone. I know you've been a bit sensitive lately. Maybe you're going through some hormonal changes. Hormonal changes? Abigail repeated incredulously. Seriously? He was reducing her to a hysterical menopausal woman. The fury she had been containing began to boil beneath the surface, but she managed to keep her voice steady. There is nothing hormonal about this, Jason. This is about one very clear thing: respect. And for 5 years, neither you nor your wife has shown me any." "That's not true," Vanessa protested. "We've always treated you well. You're part of the family." "The part of the family that serves, cleans, and cooks while you two have fun," Abigail countered. "The part of the family that is never consulted but is always expected to obey." Jason stepped closer, placing a hand on Abigail's shoulder as he used to do as a boy when he wanted something. "All right, Mom, I understand you're upset, but think about it. It's just 1 week. After Christmas, everything goes back to normal." Normal. Their normal, where she was invisible except when they needed her. Where her feelings didn't matter as long as their life was comfortable. Where her house had ceased to be her sanctuary and had become their personal hotel. "No, Jason, things are not going back to normal because I'm leaving tomorrow." They both froze. Vanessa was the first to react, her voice rising an octave. "Tomorrow? Tomorrow? You can't leave tomorrow. It's impossible. My family arrives in 3 days." "Well, you should have thought of that before you took for granted that I would be your employee," Abigail replied, maintaining her serene tone as she calmly washed her coffee cup. Every movement was calculated to show that Vanessa's dramatics didn't faze her. Jason just stood there, shifting nervously from one foot to the other, clearly torn between supporting his hysterical wife and trying to reason with his mother. His eyes darted between the two women as if he were watching a tense tennis match. "Mom, please," he finally murmured. "At least tell us where you're going. When will you be back?" "I'm going to visit my sister in Miami," she lied smoothly, "and I'll be back after New Year's." The lie came naturally, surprising even her, but it was necessary. They couldn't know her real plans. Not yet. "After New Year's?" Vanessa practically choked on the words. But what are we going to do? I already told everyone to come. My Uncle Ricardo already bought his plane tickets from Miami. Olivia canceled her plans. Marcus took time off work." "Those are their problems, not mine," Abigail replied. She saw desperation begin to replace the rage on Vanessa's face. Her perfectly manicured hands trembled as she gripped the marble countertop, her knuckles white from the pressure. "Abigail," Vanessa's voice suddenly changed, becoming syrupy and manipulative. "You know I've always thought of you as a second mother. You're so important to me, to us. You can't just abandon us like this." There it was, the switch in tactics from fury to emotional manipulation. Abigail had seen this play many times before, but it no longer worked on her. "If you really considered me a mother, you wouldn't treat me like a servant." "But I don't treat you like a servant," Vanessa protested. I just thought you enjoyed cooking for the family. I thought you liked to feel useful." Useful. That word again. It pierced Abigail like a dagger. For 5 years she had believed that being useful was her way of keeping the peace, of securing a place in her son's life. But now she understood that being useful had only made her a shadow in her own home. "You know what, Vanessa? You're right. I do like to feel useful," Abigail said. "That's why I'm going to be useful to myself for the first time in years." Jason intervened again, his frustration now evident in every line on his face. "Mom, this isn't fair. You know we don't have the money to hire a caterer for 25 people. The deposit on the new apartment wiped out our savings." A new apartment. This was the first Abigail was hearing about it. Her eyes narrowed as she processed this information. Since when were they planning to move, and why hadn't they told her? "What new apartment?" she asked, her voice laced with a dangerous curiosity. Vanessa and Jason exchanged a guilty look, the kind of look shared when you've just revealed something that was supposed to be a secret. "Well," Jason began, looking down at his shoes, "we were going to tell you after the holidays. We found an incredible place downtown. 3 bedrooms, ocean view, a gym in the building." Sounds expensive, Abigail observed, keeping her tone neutral, though her mind was racing. Well, yes, but it's worth the investment. And don't worry, we're not moving far. Only 30 minutes from here. 30 minutes. Close enough to keep using her house as their personal restaurant, but far enough to have their privacy. How convenient. And how do you plan to pay for it? She asked, though she already had a suspicion about the answer. Vanessa's face suddenly lit up as if she'd found the perfect solution to all their problems. That's why it's so important that we have a perfect Christmas. My Uncle Ricardo is very generous when he's impressed. And my brother-in-law Marcus has connections in real estate. If everything goes well, they could help us with Jason's business. There it was, the real reason behind the grand Christmas celebration. It wasn't about family or tradition. It was about money, about impressing wealthy relatives to get financial favors. And she was the cornerstone of their manipulation scheme. I see, she murmured, letting the silence hang as they both waited for her response. So you need your Christmas to be perfect to impress the rich family. Exactly, Vanessa exclaimed, relieved that Abigail finally understood the gravity of the situation. I knew you'd get it. You're so smart, Abigail. You always know the right thing to do. The right thing. For 5 years, the right thing had been to sacrifice her comfort, her time, her dignity to make their lives easier. But now she had a completely different perspective on what was right. You're right, Vanessa. I know exactly what the right thing to do is. That's why my decision stands. I'm leaving tomorrow. The hope vanished from their faces like spilled water. Vanessa began to breathe rapidly, on the verge of a panic attack. You can't do this. You can't ruin our future over a tantrum. It's not a tantrum, Abigail said firmly. It's a well-thought-out decision. But what will my family think when they arrive and there's no one here to receive them? Vanessa demanded. What will they think when they see there's no food prepared? They will think that their niece invited them without having the capacity to be a host, and they will be correct. As Vanessa's face crumpled in a mixture of anger and despair, Abigail felt a calm certainty settle over her. What neither of them knew, what they couldn't possibly suspect, was that this wasn't a spontaneous act of rebellion. This was the culmination of months of careful planning. Planning that had begun the day she discovered the truth about her dear daughter-in-law. 3 months earlier, while cleaning Jason's home office, an act of kindness that had become expected rather than appreciated, Abigail had found a forgotten folder among his papers. It contained bank statements, printed emails, and legal documents that at first glance appeared to be work-related. But something caught her eye. Vanessa's name appeared again and again in transactions she didn't recognize. That night, after they had gone to sleep, Abigail had returned to the office and reviewed everything meticulously. What she found chilled her to the bone. Vanessa had been spending money they didn't have, a lot of money. Credit cards in Jason's name that he knew nothing about. Personal loans using the house as collateral. Compulsive shopping sprees at luxury stores that added up to over $50,000 in debt. But that wasn't all. Abigail also found emails where Vanessa discussed with her friends how to manage Jason so he wouldn't discover her spending, how to keep him distracted while she continued shopping. And most chilling of all, a message thread where she planned to convince him to sell the house, Abigail's house, to invest in their future together. That night, Abigail couldn't sleep. She stayed awake until dawn, processing the betrayal, the manipulation, the deceit. But along with the devastation, something else began to grow. A cold, calculated determination to protect herself. Now, watching Jason and Vanessa scramble to salvage their Christmas plans, Abigail felt a grim satisfaction. They had no idea what was coming. The next day, while Vanessa and Jason were still in the living room arguing in desperate whispers, Abigail locked herself in her bedroom and pulled out her laptop. It was time to set the second phase of her plan in motion. a plan that had been brewing for months, ever since her discovery in Jason's office. Following that shocking revelation, Abigail had begun her own silent investigation. She'd hired a private detective, a discreet man her lawyer had recommended years ago when a teacher at her school had been suspected of embezzlement. She'd asked him to track all of Vanessa's financial activities, wanting to understand the full scope of the deception. What they discovered was even worse than she had imagined. Not only was Vanessa a compulsive spender, but she had also been lying about her job. Her important career at the boutique gallery was part-time, and she was barely making minimum wage. Yet she had been telling Jason she earned 3 times that amount. The extra money for her personal expenses came from those secret credit cards and loans. And there was more. Vanessa had been telling her relatives that they were much wealthier than they actually were. She had told them that Jason had a thriving business, that Abigail had a considerable fortune, and that the house was worth twice its actual market value. All lies to maintain her image as a successful, well-married woman. Sitting on her bed now, Abigail opened her encrypted email account, another precaution she'd taken when she realized she might need to communicate without Vanessa's knowledge. She had 3 new messages waiting for her. The first was from her lawyer, Robert Franklin. Abigail, all the documents we discussed are ready. The changes to the will have been notarized, the amendment to the house deed is registered, and the new residency agreements are prepared for signatures. Let me know when you want to proceed. Robert II was from her bank, confirming that all her savings had been transferred to a new account at a different institution, an account Jason knew nothing about and would never have access to. But it was the third email that made Abigail smile. It was from Ricardo Alvarez, Vanessa's uncle, responding to the careful message Abigail had sent him 3 days earlier. Dear Mrs. Reynolds, thank you for your message expressing concern about Vanessa and Jason's financial situation. As her uncle, I appreciate being made aware of these issues. The bank statements you forwarded are indeed concerning, especially as Vanessa has been telling us quite a different story about their circumstances. My family places a high value on financial responsibility. Vanessa knows this. It disturbs me to learn she has been concealing these problems while simultaneously asking for business investment. I'll be arriving in your city on December 23rd as planned. Perhaps we could speak privately about these matters before the family gathering. I'd value your perspective as someone who clearly cares about both Vanessa and Jason's well-being. Regards, Ricardo Alvarez Perfect. Ricardo was exactly the ally Abigail needed, a successful businessman who valued honesty and had the financial leverage to make Vanessa listen. Abigail's plan had been meticulous. She hadn't just contacted Ricardo. She'd reached out to key members of Vanessa's family. Olivia, the successful older sister who worked in finance and had an impeccable reputation. Marcus, the real estate agent who was supposedly going to help Jason and Vanessa, and Charlotte, Vanessa's college roommate who had recently become a partner in a prestigious law firm. To each, Abigail had sent a carefully crafted email introducing herself as Vanessa's concerned mother-in-law. She explained that she was worried about the young couple's financial situation and wanted to ask their advice on how to help. And to each email, she had accidentally attached some of the most alarming bank statements and loan documents she had found. The responses were immediate and exactly what she had hoped for. Ricardo was furious at being deceived about Vanessa's real situation. Marcus immediately canceled any plans to assist with real estate matters, citing ethical concerns about financial transparency. Olivia was so angry she threatened to come personally to sort out her younger sister's mess. And Charlotte, with her legal background, had written a stern warning about the potential consequences of Vanessa's financial deception. But the best part was that none of them had said anything to Vanessa yet. They were waiting for the Christmas gathering to confront her in person, a gathering that would now be missing the host they expected, the food they were promised, and the festive atmosphere Vanessa had painted in her lies. Abigail's phone vibrated with a text message from Ricardo. "Mrs. Reynolds, after reviewing the documents you sent, my family and I have decided to arrive a day earlier than planned. We want to speak with Vanessa about some important matters before the celebration. Would it be possible for you to receive us on the morning of the 23rd? The morning of the 23rd? Exactly when she would be packing her bags for her trip to Miami. What a perfect coincidence." "Of course, Ricardo," she replied quickly. "It will be a pleasure to have you. However, I must inform you that I will be leaving for a trip that same day, so Vanessa and Jason will be your hosts." His response came seconds later. "Perfect. That will be exactly what we need." Abigail closed her laptop and lay back on her bed, smiling in the dark. For 5 years, she had been the silent victim, the submissive mother-in-law, the free employee. But all that time, she had been observing, learning, understanding how the Reynolds-Parker household really worked. Vanessa thought she was so smart, so manipulative, so clever, but she had gravely underestimated the older woman who cleaned up her messes. She had assumed Abigail's age and her apparent meekness meant she was helpless, powerless. Tomorrow morning, while they were still asleep, she would be packing her bags. Not for Miami, as she had told them. Her real destination was a luxury hotel just an hour away, where she had booked a suite with an ocean view for the next 2 weeks. From there, she would have a front-row seat to the collapse of the little kingdom of lies Vanessa had built. She would watch Vanessa's family discover her deceptions. She would watch Jason finally open his eyes to the woman he had married. She would watch her whole perfectly manipulated world fall apart piece by piece. And best of all, she wouldn't have to lift a finger to make it happen. Vanessa had dug her own grave with years of lies and deceit. Abigail had simply taken the shovel out of her hands and shown her family where to look. Outside, she could hear that the argument in the living room had finally ended. Footsteps on the stairs, doors closing, the tense silence of a house full of unresolved conflicts. But Abigail slept deeply that night. For the first time in 5 years, she slept with the smile of someone who knows that justice, even when it's late, always arrives. At 5:30 in the morning, Abigail's alarm clock sang like an anthem of freedom. She rose quickly before either Jason or Vanessa would be awake. After a quick shower, she dressed in comfortable traveling clothes and began to pack her suitcases, a task she had partly completed over the previous weeks, adding items gradually so no one would notice. Every garment she folded was another step toward her independence. Every item she stored away was a silent declaration that she was no longer anyone's servant. Into her largest suitcase went her favorite clothes, her personal documents, and the framed photo of Thomas she kept by her bedside. Into a smaller bag went her laptop, her medication, and her jewelry, including the diamond earrings Thomas had given her on their 25th anniversary, which Vanessa had often borrowed without asking. As she packed, Abigail moved with efficiency born from years of organization, but also with a quiet reverence. This wasn't just a departure. It was a reclamation. Each item she packed represented a piece of herself she was taking back. By 6:15, she was ready. She glanced around her bedroom one last time, making sure she hadn't forgotten anything essential. She'd decided to leave most of her belongings. They would still be here when she returned. And return she would, on her own terms. Before leaving her room, Abigail took a small key from her jewelry box and locked her bedroom door. It was the first time she had used that lock in years. Then she removed all the spare keys from the hook in the kitchen drawer, placing them in her purse. Vanessa would not have free access to her personal space anymore. She carried her suitcases down the stairs carefully, wincing at a creak on the 3rd step. From the guest bedroom, she could hear Jason's soft snoring and Vanessa's deeper breathing. They had no idea what was about to happen. In the kitchen, Abigail placed a sealed envelope on the counter, propped against the coffee maker where it couldn't be missed. Inside was a brief but precise note. Have decided to leave early for my trip. The house is in your hands. Enjoy your perfect Christmas. Abigail. What the note didn't mention was that she had made a few additional preparations before leaving, like completely emptying the pantry and refrigerator, leaving only a carton of milk and some bread. After all, if they were going to host 25 people, they needed to learn to be responsible for buying food. She had also locked away all her good china, her elegant tablecloths, and her Christmas decorations in a storage closet for which she had the only key. If they wanted to impress the rich family, they would have to get their own supplies. But her final touch had been to cancel the cleaning service that came twice a week, a service that she paid for, but for which Vanessa always took credit. Starting today, she could experience what it meant to keep a house clean on her own. The taxi arrived promptly at 6:30 a.m. As the driver loaded her bags, Abigail took one last look at the house where she had lived for 3 decades, a house that had been her sanctuary, then her prison, and now would once again be her fortress. Because even though she was leaving temporarily, this was still her house, and she had every intention of reclaiming it completely. The ride to the Ocean View Grand Hotel took less than an hour. Abigail watched the sunrise over the water, feeling lighter with each mile that separated her from the demands and manipulations she had endured for 5 years. The hotel, a gleaming tower of glass and steel overlooking the Atlantic, was everything she had dreamed of during her years of forced domestic service. The suite she had reserved was on the 22nd floor, offering panoramic views of the ocean and the coastline. It featured a king-sized bed with Egyptian cotton sheets, a marble bathroom with a soaking tub, a fully stocked kitchenette, and a private balcony where she could enjoy her morning coffee in peace. As the bellhop arranged her luggage, Abigail walked to the window and gazed out at the endless blue horizon. For the first time in years, no one would be shouting for her from the kitchen. No one would be expecting her to appear with fresh coffee. No one would be assuming her time had no value. "Is there anything else you need, Ms. Reynolds?" the bellhop asked. "No, thank you," Abigail replied, slipping him a generous tip. "This is perfect." After he left, she explored the suite, running her fingers over the luxurious furnishings, testing the softness of the bed, examining the room service menu. She ordered a breakfast of eggs Benedict, fresh fruit, and champagne, an indulgence she would never have allowed herself at home, where Vanessa monitored every expenditure that wasn't for her own benefit. While waiting for her breakfast, Abigail unpacked her essentials and set up her laptop on the desk overlooking the ocean. She checked her email. Nothing new from Ricardo or the others yet. They were probably still traveling, preparing for the confrontation to come. She had just settled onto the balcony with her first cup of coffee when her phone began to ring. She checked the caller ID. Jason. It was 10:15 a.m. They must have just found her note. She let it ring 4 times, savoring the moment before answering. "Hello?" "Mom?" Jason's voice was panicked. "Where are you? We just found your note. Why did you leave so early?" "Good morning, Jason," Abigail replied calmly. "I decided there was no point in prolonging the inevitable. You two have a lot to do to prepare, and I am very much looking forward to some rest." "But Mom, this is so sudden. Vanessa is... well, she's pretty upset." Upset. What a diplomatic way to say she was having a full-blown panic attack at the realization that she would actually have to take charge of her own life. "I'm sure she'll manage perfectly," Abigail said coolly. "After all, she's a very capable woman." There was a long pause. She could hear voices in the background, Vanessa speaking in a rapid, hysterical tone. "Could you at least tell us where you are? In case of an emergency?" Jason pleaded. "I am safe and in a good place," Abigail replied. "That's all you need to know." Mom, please. I know you're angry, but this is extreme. Vanessa's family arrives in 2 days and we don't know how— Jason, she interrupted firmly. You are 36 years old. Vanessa is 34. You are fully functional adults. I am certain you can solve your own problems without relying on a 66-year-old woman. Another pause. This one longer. Fine, he finally sighed. But promise me you'll be okay. And when are you coming back? I'll be back when I'm ready. Enjoy your Christmas. She hung up before he could insist further and immediately put her phone on silent mode. She knew the next few hours would bring a constant bombardment of desperate calls and messages, but she had waited 5 years for this moment of peace. She wasn't going to let them ruin it. Room service arrived with her breakfast, wheeled in on a white-clothed table and arranged with an elegance that reminded her of her own dinner parties. Parties for which Vanessa had always taken credit. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, while her phone blinked constantly with silenced notifications. The best part was yet to come. Tomorrow morning, exactly as she had calculated, Vanessa's family would begin to arrive. They would not find the perfect Christmas she had promised them. Instead, they would find the raw reality of who this woman who had been living on lies for years truly was. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Abigail finally checked her messages. There were 17 missed calls from Jason, 31 from Vanessa, and an avalanche of texts escalating from confusion to pleading to outrage. The first voicemail was from Jason. Mom, please pick up. Vanessa is hysterical. We don't know what to make for breakfast for 25 people. The grocery store doesn't open until 8, and the family arrives at exactly that time. We need help urgently. Please call us. The second was from Vanessa, her voice completely broken. Abigail, I know you're mad at me, and I get why. But please don't make me look bad in front of my family. They traveled from so far away. My Uncle Ricardo came from Miami. Olivia canceled important plans. I don't know how to cook for this many people. I don't even know where to start. I promise we'll talk later and fix everything. But right now I desperately need your help. The third message was even better. Vanessa again, now sobbing. Abigail, I just checked the pantry and the refrigerator. Everything is empty. Why is there nothing? How am I supposed to feed my family? Where is the good china? Where are the Christmas tablecloths? Please, at least just tell me where you put everything. Just that. Please. Abigail smiled as she deleted the messages one by one. The dawning realization that running a household required planning, effort, and actual money. The tardy understanding that food doesn't magically appear in refrigerators, that tables don't set themselves, that decorations don't install themselves by magic. But the message she was truly waiting for arrived at 7:15 the next morning. It was from a voice she didn't recognize, but it spoke with authority. Mrs. Reynolds, this is Ricardo Alvarez, Vanessa's uncle. We arrived at the airport early and decided to come straight to your house. We expect to be there in 15 minutes. I'm very much looking forward to meeting you and having that conversation we've been planning. Perfect. They would arrive at the peak of Vanessa and Jason's panic. At 8:20 her phone rang. This time, she answered. Mom. Jason's voice was trembling, on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Can you talk? Good morning, Jason, she replied pleasantly. Of course I can talk. How is your morning going? Mom, please don't do this. Vanessa's family just arrived, and we have nothing to offer them. Literally nothing. Vanessa is crying in the bathroom, and I don't know what to do. Have you explained the situation to them? What situation? How do I explain that my mother decided to go on vacation right when we needed her most? When they needed her most. Not when she needed respect or understanding or a simple thank you for 5 years of service. Only when they needed her. Tell them the truth, Jason, Abigail suggested. That for 5 years you took it for granted that I would be your unpaid domestic servant, and that I finally decided I deserved a vacation." There was a pause. She could hear voices in the background, a mix of panic and confusion. Someone was speaking sternly, probably Ricardo asking where the main hostess was. "At least can you tell us where you always bought the food, what you used to make for special occasions? Anything to help?" Jason begged. "Jason, I didn't always buy anything," she explained patiently. "I planned for weeks in advance. I researched recipes, made detailed lists, compared prices, and dedicated entire days to preparation. It wasn't magic. It was work. A lot of work." The silence on the other end told her he was finally beginning to understand the magnitude of what he had ignored for years. "Look," he continued, his voice smaller, "I know we've been inconsiderate, but right now I need practical solutions. What do I do with 25 hungry people in my living room? Order takeout, call restaurants, go to the supermarket, do what all responsible adults do when they have guests. But it's the holidays. Everything is closed or booked solid. The restaurants have no availability." "Then maybe you should have thought of that before you invited 25 people without consulting the person you expected to do all the work." She heard a new voice in the background, a serious tone. Ricardo was clearly demanding an explanation. "Mom, Vanessa's uncle wants to talk to you. He says he needs to understand what's going on." "I would love to talk to him," Abigail replied smoothly, "but I'm on vacation. Tell him Vanessa can explain everything perfectly. After all, she's the one who organized this gathering." "Please, Mom, just 5 minutes. He's very confused and a little upset. I think he can help us solve this. Help us." Again, it was all about helping them. It was never about what she needed, what she deserved, or how they had made her feel for years. "Jason listened to me very carefully," Abigail said, her voice firm but calm. "For 5 years, every time you needed something, I was there. Every time Vanessa wanted to impress someone, I did the work. Every time you had problems, I was the solution. Today, for the first time in half a decade, you have to solve your own problems, and that is not my responsibility." "But it's my family," he finally shouted, losing his composure. She heard Ricardo's clear voice in the background. "Young man, I need to understand what kind of family gathering you organized. Where is the woman of the house? Where is the grandmother who invited us?" Ricardo had clearly understood from his conversations with Vanessa that Abigail was the matriarch who organized these events, the main hostess, the person responsible for the family's hospitality. And now there was no one, just 2 confused adults finally facing the consequences of their own choices. "Mom, please at least talk to him. Explain that there has been a misunderstanding." "There is no misunderstanding, Jason. There is a reality that you have refused to see for years, and that reality is that without mutual respect, there is no functional family." She hung up. This time she turned the phone off completely. It was time for the next phase. Abigail went down to the hotel's business center. It was time to deploy the most delicious part of her plan. She sat at a computer and opened her email. She had several new messages from Vanessa's family. The first was from Olivia, the financially responsible sister. "Dear Mrs. Reynolds, we've just arrived at your house and the situation is quite confusing. Vanessa told us you left for an emergency, but we don't understand why the house seems uninhabited. There is no food, no Christmas preparations, and frankly, Vanessa's attitude is very strange. Could we speak by phone?" The second message was from Ricardo, his tone considerably more serious. "Mrs. Reynolds, I respect that you had to travel for an emergency, but I need to understand what is happening in this house. Vanessa cannot coherently explain why the food she promised is not here, why there are no Christmas decorations, or even why she did not know you would be gone. This does not align at all with the family picture she painted for us. Please contact me urgently. Perfect. It was exactly the opening she had been waiting for. She replied to both emails with a carefully constructed message. Dear Ricardo and Olivia, I deeply apologize for the confusion. I was forced to move up my trip due to circumstances I would rather not discuss over email. However, I believe it is important for you to understand Vanessa and Jason's true situation before continuing with any Christmas plans. The documents I previously sent you reflect only part of the financial reality. If you truly wish to help Vanessa, I suggest you have a very frank conversation with her about her spending habits and her unrealistic expectations regarding family support. Sincerely, Abigail. She sent the message and waited. She didn't have to wait long. 20 minutes later, her hotel room phone rang. It was the front desk. Ma'am, you have a long-distance call. A Mr. Ricardo Alvarez says it's urgent. Put him through, please. Ricardo's voice was tense but controlled. Mrs. Reynolds, thank you for taking my call. I need to ask you some direct questions about my niece. Of course, Ricardo, I'm all ears. First, is it true that Vanessa has been asking you to cook and clean for all her family gatherings? That is correct. For the last 5 years, every time you have visited or she has had guests, I have handled all the preparations. And when she told us about the elaborate dinners and perfect events, was she organizing them, or were you? I planned everything from scratch. Vanessa took the credit. There was a long pause. She could hear voices in the background, clearly Ricardo arguing with someone. Second question, the financial statements you sent us, are they real? Completely real. I obtained them directly from my son's personal files. And Vanessa knows you discovered her debts? Until today, she had no idea that I knew about her secret spending or her lies about her income. I see. His voice had turned to ice. One more question. Why did you decide to leave at this exact moment? Because I grew tired of being treated like a domestic servant in my own house. Vanessa assumed I would cook for 25 people without even asking if I was available or willing. The silence that followed was long and tense. Finally, Ricardo spoke, his voice dripping with disappointment and contained anger. Mrs. Reynolds, my family owes you an apology. Vanessa has been lying to us for years. She painted a picture of you as a prosperous family where she was the perfect organizer. She asked us for financial help to expand Jason's business when apparently the money was to pay off her compulsive shopping debts. I'm afraid so. And we, like fools, were ready to help because we believed she had proven herself to be responsible and successful, when in reality you have been the one keeping everything running while she took the credit. Well, now you know, Abigail said, unable to keep a note of satisfaction from her voice. And let me tell you, my family does not tolerate this kind of deceit. Vanessa is going to have some very serious explaining to do. Ricardo, if I may suggest something, Abigail said carefully, I think it would be beneficial for Vanessa to face the natural consequences of her decisions. She has lived in a bubble of privilege where others solved her problems. Perhaps it's time for her to learn to be truly independent. I completely agree, Ricardo said firmly. In fact, I have some news for her that is going to change her perspective drastically. The supposed financial support she was expecting from the family for her husband's business? Well, that was entirely dependent on her demonstrating fiscal responsibility and transparency. After seeing these documents and the current situation, I can assure you there will be no support. Abigail's smile widened. I understand. But there's more, Ricardo continued. My brother-in-law, Marcus, who was going to help them with real estate connections, is also very upset. Apparently, Vanessa had asked him to evaluate some properties for investment, including the house where you live. Did you know about this? This was new. Abigail hadn't known Vanessa had gone so far as to ask Marcus to evaluate her house for a sale. No, I did not know that. Well, Marcus is furious. He invested time and resources based on false information. He feels completely deceived. Ricardo paused, then continued with determination in his voice. Which brings me to my main point. My family has decided that this perfect Christmas is going to become a family intervention. Vanessa will have to explain every lie, every deception, every manipulation. A family intervention. This was even better than she had planned. Not only would Vanessa have to face the logistical disaster of her party, but she would also have to account for years of deceit before her entire family. "And what about the other relatives?" Abigail asked. "They are all aware of the situation now. For dinner tonight, the whole family will know the truth about Vanessa." "And does she know?" "Not yet, but she's about to." Abigail could hear voices rising in the background. Things were clearly escalating at her house. "Mrs. Reynolds, I have to go deal with this situation, but I want you to know that my family respects you enormously for enduring this for so long and for having the dignity to walk away." "Thank you, Ricardo. That means a great deal to me. One more thing. When you are ready to return, we hope to meet you properly. The real Abigail, not the employee Vanessa pretended you were. It will be a pleasure." Abigail hung up and leaned back in her chair, feeling a deep, warm satisfaction. At her house, Vanessa's world of lies was crumbling piece by piece, exactly as she had planned. That night, while Vanessa and Jason were still arguing in desperate whispers downstairs, Abigail locked herself in her bedroom and opened her laptop. It was time to execute the second phase of her plan, a strategy she'd been developing since discovering Vanessa's deception. 3 months ago, while cleaning Jason's office, she had found financial documents revealing shocking truths. Vanessa had opened secret credit cards in Jason's name, accumulated over $50,000 in shopping debts, and was planning to convince Jason to sell Abigail's house to cover her expenses. Most disturbing were emails where Vanessa discussed manipulating Jason to keep him distracted from her spending. That night, Abigail had begun her counter-strategy. She hired a private detective who uncovered even more. Vanessa barely earned minimum wage at her prestigious gallery job, but claimed triple that income to Jason. She told her wealthy relatives that Jason's business was thriving when it was struggling. She presented herself as successful while hiding mounting debt. Abigail examined her encrypted email inbox. 3 messages awaited her. First, from her lawyer, Robert. "All documents ready. Will changes notarized. House deed amended. New residency agreements prepared." Second, bank confirmation that her savings had been transferred to an account Jason couldn't access. Third, and most satisfying, from Ricardo Alvarez, Vanessa's wealthy uncle. "Dear Mrs. Reynolds, thank you for sharing these concerning financial documents. Vanessa has painted quite a different picture of their circumstances. As someone who values financial responsibility, I'm disturbed she's concealing these problems while requesting business investment. I'll arrive on December 23rd as planned. Perhaps we could speak privately before the family gathering. Regards, Ricardo Perfect." Abigail had strategically contacted key family members: Ricardo, Olivia, Vanessa's financially responsible sister, Marcus, the real estate connection, and Charlotte, Vanessa's lawyer friend. To each, she'd sent a carefully crafted email expressing concern about the couple's finances, accidentally attaching the most alarming bank statements. Their responses were immediate and precisely what she'd hoped for. Ricardo was furious. Marcus canceled any assistance plans. Olivia threatened to personally sort out her sister's mess, and Charlotte warned about legal consequences of financial deception. Best of all, none had confronted Vanessa yet. They were waiting to do so at the Christmas gathering she had so carefully orchestrated. Abigail's phone vibrated with a message from Ricardo. "Mrs. Reynolds, after reviewing the documents, my family and I will arrive a day earlier than planned to speak with Vanessa about important matters. Would you be available on the morning of the 23rd? The morning of the 23rd, exactly when she planned to leave. Perfect timing. Of course, Ricardo. However, I'll be departing for a trip that day, so Vanessa and Jason will host you. His reply came instantly. Perfect. That will be exactly what we need. Abigail closed her laptop and smiled in the darkness. For 5 years, she'd been the silent victim, but all that time she had been watching and learning. Vanessa had gravely underestimated the older woman she'd treated as a servant. She'd assumed Abigail's age made her helpless and powerless. Tomorrow morning, while they slept, Abigail would pack. Not for Miami as they believed, but for the Ocean View Grand Hotel just an hour away. She'd booked a luxury suite with ocean views for 2 weeks, giving herself a front-row seat to watch Vanessa's kingdom of lies collapse. She would witness Vanessa's family discover her deceptions, Jason finally seeing his wife's true nature, and their perfectly manipulated world crumbling piece by piece. Best of all, Abigail wouldn't need to act further. Vanessa had dug her own grave with years of lies. Abigail had simply shown her family where to look. Outside, she heard the argument downstairs finally end. Footsteps on the stairs, doors closing, the heavy silence of unresolved conflict. But Abigail slept deeply that night. For the first time in 5 years, she slept with the smile of someone who knows that justice, even when it arrives late, always comes. At 5:30 a.m., Abigail's alarm rang like a freedom bell. She rose quickly and prepared efficiently, having partially packed over previous weeks to avoid suspicion. Each item she packed represented a step toward independence. Into her largest suitcase went clothes, documents, and Thomas's photograph. Into a smaller bag went her laptop, medication, and jewelry, including diamond earrings Vanessa often borrowed without asking. Before leaving her room, she locked her bedroom door, something she hadn't done in years, and removed all spare keys from the kitchen drawer. Downstairs, she placed a sealed envelope against the coffee maker. Have decided to leave early for my trip. The house is in your hands. Enjoy your perfect Christmas. Abigail. What she didn't mention were her additional preparations. Emptying the pantry and refrigerator except for milk and bread, locking away her good china and Christmas decorations, and canceling the cleaning service she paid for, but Vanessa claimed credit for. The taxi arrived at 6:30 a.m. As her bags were loaded, Abigail took a final look at the house that had been her sanctuary, then her prison, and soon would be her fortress again. The Ocean View Grand Hotel exceeded her expectations. Her 22nd floor suite offered panoramic ocean views, Egyptian cotton sheets, marble bathroom, and private balcony. No one would be shouting for coffee, expecting immediate service, or assuming her time had no value. She ordered an indulgent breakfast, eggs Benedict, fresh fruit, and champagne, luxuries Vanessa would have criticized as wasteful. At 10:15 a.m., her phone rang. Jason. She let it ring several times before answering. Mom? Where are you? We found your note. Why did you leave early? I decided there was no point prolonging the inevitable, she replied calmly. You two have preparations to make, and I'm looking forward to rest. But Vanessa she's pretty upset. I'm sure she'll manage perfectly. She's very capable. Could you at least tell us where you are, in case of emergency? I'm safe and in a good place. That's all you need to know. Mom, please, this is extreme. Vanessa's family arrives in 2 days. Jason, she interrupted firmly, you're 36. Vanessa is 34. You're fully functional adults. You can solve problems without relying on a 66-year-old woman. Fine, he sighed after a pause. When are you coming back? When I'm ready. Enjoy your Christmas. She hung up and silenced her phone, knowing the bombardment of calls and messages would continue. She deserved this peace after 5 years of servitude. Tomorrow morning, Vanessa's family would arrive to find no perfect Christmas, only the truth about who Vanessa really was. At 3:00 p.m., Abigail finally checked her messages. 17 missed calls from Jason, 31 from Vanessa, and dozens of increasingly desperate texts. Jason's voicemail. "Mom, please pick up. Vanessa is hysterical. We don't know how to feed 25 people. The family arrives at 8 a.m. We need urgent help." Vanessa's first message. "Abigail, I know you're mad, but please don't make me look bad to my family. I don't know how to cook for this many people. I promise we'll fix everything later." Her second, sobbing. "The pantry and refrigerator are empty. Where's the good china? The tablecloths? How am I supposed to feed everyone?" Abigail smiled as she deleted each message. The realization was dawning that running a household required planning, effort, and resources. Food doesn't magically appear. Tables don't set themselves. Decorations don't materialize from thin air. The next morning, a message arrived from Ricardo. "Mrs. Reynolds, we arrived at the airport early and are heading directly to your house. We'll be there in 15 minutes. Looking forward to our planned conversation." Perfect timing, the height of Jason and Vanessa's panic. At 8:20 a.m., Jason called again. This time, Abigail answered. "Mom, please don't do this," he pleaded, voice trembling. "Vanessa's family just arrived and we have nothing to offer them. Nothing. Vanessa is crying in the bathroom." "Have you explained the situation to them?" "What situation? How do I explain my mother went on vacation when we needed her most?" "When you needed me most," Abigail noted. "Not when I needed respect after 5 years of service. Tell them the truth, that for 5 years I was treated as an unpaid servant and finally deserved a vacation." After a pause, she heard stern voices in the background. Ricardo demanding explanations. "Mom, at least tell us what to cook for 25 people. "Jason, I didn't just cook. I planned weeks in advance, researched recipes, compared prices, and prepared for days. It wasn't magic. It was work." "I know we've been inconsiderate," he admitted, "but I need solutions. What do I do with 25 hungry people in my living room?" "Order takeout. Call restaurants. Go shopping. Do what responsible adults do. Everything's closed or booked for the holidays. Perhaps you should have considered that before inviting people without consulting the person expected to do all the work." "Mom, Vanessa's uncle wants to talk to you." "I'm on vacation. Tell him Vanessa can explain everything. After all, she organized this gathering." "Please, Mom, 5 minutes. He's confused and upset." "Jason, for 5 years I solved your problems. Today, for the first time, you must solve your own." "But it's my family!" he shouted, finally losing composure. She heard Ricardo's voice. "Young man, what kind of gathering is this? Where is the grandmother who invited us?" 2 confused adults were finally facing their choices' consequences. "There is no misunderstanding, Jason," Abigail concluded. "Without mutual respect, there is no functional family." She hung up and turned off her phone. It was time for the final phase. At the hotel business center, she checked her emails. Olivia had written, "We've arrived and the situation is confusing. Vanessa claims you left for an emergency, but nothing is prepared. Her attitude is strange. Could we speak?" Ricardo's message was more direct. "I need to understand what's happening. Vanessa cannot explain the missing food decorations or why she didn't know you'd be gone. This contradicts everything she told us. Please contact me urgently." Abigail replied to both. "I apologize for the confusion. I moved up my trip due to circumstances I won't detail via email. However, you should understand Vanessa and Jason's true situation before continuing Christmas plans. The documents I sent reflect only part of the reality. If you truly wish to help Vanessa, have a frank conversation about her spending habits and unrealistic expectations. 20 minutes later, her hotel room phone rang, Ricardo calling. "Mrs. Reynolds, I need to ask direct questions about my niece." "Of course, Ricardo. Is it true Vanessa has had you cook and clean for all family gatherings?" "Yes. For 5 years I've handled all preparations while she took credit." "And the financial statements you sent, they're authentic?" "Completely. I found them in my son's files." "Does Vanessa know you discovered her debts?" "Until today, she had no idea." "Why did you leave at this specific moment?" "Because I tired of being treated as a servant. Vanessa assumed I would cook for 25 people without asking if I was willing." After a long pause, Ricardo spoke, his voice icy with disappointment. "My family owes you an apology. Vanessa has been lying to us for years. She painted herself as the perfect organizer when you were doing everything. She requested financial help for Jason's business, apparently to cover shopping debts." "I'm afraid so. We were ready to help because we thought she'd proven responsible. Instead, you've been keeping everything running while she took credit." Ricardo continued, "There will be no financial support. Marcus is furious she asked him to evaluate your house for sale. Did you know about this?" "No, I didn't," Abigail admitted, surprised even now by Vanessa's audacity. "My family has decided this perfect Christmas will become a family intervention. Vanessa will answer for every deception. Everyone will know the truth by dinner tonight." This exceeded Abigail's expectations. Not only would Vanessa face the party disaster, but also a full family reckoning. "When you return," Ricardo concluded, "we hope to meet the real you, not the employee Vanessa pretended you were." Abigail hung up, feeling deep satisfaction. At her house, Vanessa's world of lies was crumbling exactly as planned.